So we are going to go ahead and get started here. So welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Smarter Labeling for Hospitality, Improving Order Accuracy and Efficiency with QuickStick Receipts. We'll be discussing how linerless labeling is helping restaurants and quick service restaurants keep up with the growing demands of takeout, delivery, and high volume operations. So we have two really great guest speakers today. The first is Ian Livesey from Epson. He's the product manager for their thermal label printers, and he's been at Epson for 8 years now. And for the last 4 years, he's really been working on bringing linerless printing technology to retail, hospitality, and QSR markets. Epson has been a leading provider of POS and printing technology for nearly 30 years, offering everything from receipt and kitchen printing to innovative labeling solutions. And joining him is Stephen Enfield, CEO at POS Supply Solutions. Stephen founded POS Supply over 25 or 26 years ago now, and has grown the company into a leading supplier of point of sale supplies for businesses across all industries, including receipt paper, labels, and custom printing solutions. So we're really excited to have both of you here. We're excited to partner together so we can help businesses that are joining us today to improve their day-to-day operations through linerless labeling. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ian and Stephen to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. And Ian, thanks for joining us. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about some of the changes in the quick service restaurant industry and the challenges that those changes have created. We're going to talk about how labeling can help you meet those challenges, and specifically, Ian's going to talk about the Epson TM-L100 liner-free label printer solution, and then we'll talk about the QuickStick Receipt Label solution, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A, and as Angela said, a nice prize drawing. So with that said, we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the new reality of the quick service restaurant industry. So we've seen an explosion of pickup orders, delivery, drive-through, online ordering, app orders, third-party platform orders, grab-and-go orders, catering. So we've seen a lot of new channels that weren't around 4, 5, 6 years ago. Certainly, COVID has accelerated the growth and the prevalence of some of these channels. We're seeing more people want to customize their orders. Again, you go into Starbucks and you get oat milk with 6 shots of caramel and an extra shot of espresso. So we're seeing more customization on orders. We're seeing more handoff points. You may place an order on a third-party platform, which comes into the point of sale system, which then goes to the printer, which may go to a barista, may go to someone in the kitchen that's going to make something else. Then it goes back to someone who's going to gather up and expo those orders before it's picked up by someone else. So again, a lot of different handoff points. And we've seen, customers are expecting more. Their expectations are higher. They want consistency across the different channels. They want their food quickly, they want it accurate, and they want it, hot and ready to roll. We saw this in retail, years back when you had, e-commerce, buy online, pick up in store, the omni-channel experience. So we're now seeing that in hospitality. And, again, we've had drive-through for a while, and we've had some of these other things for a while, but now we're just seeing, a huge increase in orders coming in all day long from those multiple channels. So, operations really need a seamless solution across those different channels, on-premise, off-premise, third-party platforms, et cetera. So on the next slide, we'll see mobile orders, and Ian will touch on again, the explosion in mobile orders.
Yeah, and thanks for having me and to talk a little bit more about this. But like you said, the explosion of just what's coming. And I liked what you said too, that like drive-through's been around, and I would say mobile orders have been around for a while too, but I think we can all agree today is so much different than it was even 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and obviously before COVID. Um, but yes, and some of these stats that we have here just on the slide, like 1 in every 5 QSR orders in North America is placed through a mobile app. Pretty impressive. I believe it 100%. I think if we asked everyone in the chat to say like what mobile app they have on their phone for a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or even DoorDash, Uber Eats, they're there, and I think we have them. And like you mentioned a little bit earlier too, now that mobile orders, everyone's got one. There's more competition with it. Everyone's trying to retain their customers a little bit more. With that brings the ability to customize your orders even more. And so I think that kind of leads us into what we'll see on the next slide. With all those customizations comes, okay, well, the orders are more complex. They're coming through a drive-through. They're coming from a DoorDash or a different third-party delivery service, or they're from a kiosk, they're in the restaurant. There's different ways to come, and within the order itself, you know, I know Steven likes extra tomatoes on his burgers and whatnot, so he's going to put it there, and he's going to ask for even more because he can kind of do it on his own phone and not have to say it out loud and whatnot. So, but with that, the complexity comes the opportunity for error as well. And so this is another stat that I was kind of surprised to read, that 1 in 8 orders contains an error. So it makes me think of when you go to a restaurant, just because of the complexity, there's different things there. And Stephen, I know you and I were talking about some of those challenges. Do you have any more to say about that? Some of what you're seeing with your kind of perspective?
Yeah, on the next slide here, again, 1 in 8 orders is incorrect. That number is crazy. Again, you think about what that does for customer service, profitability, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, so we're seeing those wrong orders or missing orders. We're seeing slow workflows due to handwritten or unclear order chits or incomplete order chits. We're seeing a lot of Sharpies, staplers, tape, stickers. You're seeing a lot of things introduced into the order workflow to try to tackle all these challenges. And then what that also does is, too many devices cluttering limited space. It's not uncommon to walk into a quick service restaurant and you see they have multiple, tablets and printers with orders coming in from, multiple channels. They've got a printer for Uber Eats. They've got a tablet for Grubhub. They've got their own app orders coming in on a different printer. So again, you're getting a lot of devices that are cluttering limited space. On the next slide, so labeling is no longer an option. It's really required in a quick service restaurant environment. And we'll talk a little bit about how it's going to improve that order accuracy. Again, you can go from 87% to every 1% you add to that makes a huge difference. Speed of service. Again, customers expect things just as quickly as they would if they walked up to the counter or sat down at a table. We didn't touch on food safety and compliance, but we've seen with the cyclospora virus and everything that's happening there, food safety, food rotation,
Sure.
compliance is a big one. We're not going to talk too much about that today, but that's another webinar. And then we're seeing more grab and go labeling. We're seeing the ability to promote your brand image and loyalty. So there's lots of areas where labels can help you, improve your customer experience, improve your profitability, improve your service, et cetera. Next slide. So again, we've touched on, labeling can fit into, a restaurant's workflow. There's many areas where labeling can help improve that workflow here. So we see, every handoff that happens with a manual process is an opportunity for a mistake. It's an opportunity to slow down the service there. So restaurants need a consistent easy to use, easy to understand system to speed up that workflow. Next slide. So again, historically, you had handwritten notes that can be difficult to read. We see Sharpies, tape, staples, stickers, to attach receipts to orders. We see, receipts that are falling off of bags because they aren't taped. Employees are spending extra time trying to identify orders and make sure this order gets arranged and expositioned together. So there's a lot of opportunity for order mix-up. And then, certainly with verbal communication, there's the opportunity, for mistakes to be made. So, if you can print a personalized label on demand, and I love this picture here of this Maria's Extra Hot Burrito. You see the image on top, handwritten on the packaging. And then, down below, you see a very neat and clean professional packaging with Maria's name. The burrito is extra hot, the order number, etc. So you can present a much more professional, a cleaner, and you can even add, with the TM-L100, Ian will talk about, you can add logos and other marketing messages. So again, it's a much cleaner presentation for the customer, and it's going to lead to a better customer experience. Ian, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the last time I hand wrote something, and it is kind of embarrassing, but I was just thinking, yes, you can handwrite it, but for how long type thing before, errors start coming, and just, having that consistency with the reliability behind it of printing something, making it digital. And then two, you're just adding more complexity like we've talked about, kind of the theme here. And so I'm handwriting one note, but now I've got another one coming this way. And so how do we manage that? And looking at, labeling as a tool to kind of help manage all those different workflows.
Yeah. This slide, we show some of the common applications, from quick service restaurants to full service to coffee shops, takeout and delivery. And on the next slide, Ian will touch on, does it really help? Does it really make a difference? And this is pretty impressive stuff here.
And it may not be news to everyone on the call, but for some, I think it is. It was for me when I first read it. But this is an article from Restaurant Dive talking about Wendy's and how they wanted to improve their sales, revive their sales, as the article says. And they wanted to focus on clean stores and order accuracy. And one of the ways that they did that was the implementation of label printers and labeling their sandwiches, their burgers and whatnot, the items inside the bags. And, we talk about this, but I think the real significant piece of this is that 1.7% rise in order accuracy because of, implementing labeling into their processes. So everything we've talked about, there is a result in labeling and taking that and making sure that, putting the effort in to make it that much better, you will see those results. And so, again, labeling looks different for, I think we'll talk a little bit more about applications and whatnot, and there's certain applications, everyone does it a little bit differently, but there's results to be had with labeling.
Yeah, so Angela, we've got a poll here. I'm curious to get everyone's feedback.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Stephen and Ian. So we'd like to get a better understanding of how everyone is currently handling your order labeling today. So you should see the poll appear on the right-hand side of your screen. So please let us know, how are you currently labeling food and beverage orders? I'll give you all a few minutes to put in your answers here. We've got a lot of people joining us today, so excited to see the feedback here.
Yeah, I'm curious how they use the labeling in South Africa. So I'm anxious to hear from a different country how they label their food and beverage orders.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's give a few more moments for the results to pop in. Cool, you can see the results in real time here. Wow, okay. So far, oh, Oh, it keeps changing. I'm not going to say anything for another couple seconds.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like we got a mix receipt, paper, linerless, not labeling at all. I don't see
Most are
any.
not labeling at all.
Yeah,
Oh, and that's changed.
yeah.
or a lot of tape and receipts.
Yep. And
Yeah.
this is consistent with what we're hearing from our customers as well. Again, like Ian said, it depends on the specific application, the size of the QSR, et cetera. But we're seeing, a variety of different ways people are labeling those food and beverage orders. You can go to the next slide. Ian
Yeah,
will talk a little bit about the TM-L100 solution.
and we have obviously we have our L90 series of linerless printers. I want to talk a little bit more about the L100 today, just because it's our latest and greatest. There's a few features about it that are a little bit different, some improvements we've made. Like just have them listed out here, kind of going through quickly, but I think in the next couple slides we'll see it. But it's a little bit faster print speed. It has a label taken sensor, which is unique to this printer. So that's when, let's say you have 15 print jobs coming out, instead of printing all 15 at once, you print one, pull it, and then the next one prints. Again, to kind of help manage all the chaos that can happen in the kitchen in those different areas. I mentioned here improved platen roller. So if we go to the next slide, I think we'll see an actual picture of our older printer. The L90 Plus has that smooth roller, and then the L100 has this ridged roller. So you kind of bear with me as I try to explain this the right way, but with the ridge roller, there's less surface area. And so we're seeing with a lot of these applications, customers are wanting more from their labels, to do more with their labels. I don't need it to stick on a beverage just for the item. I need it to stay on the cup the whole way through, from the store all the way to the customer's home, whether that be on the bag or the item. So I need a stickier or a more aggressive adhesive. And having that ridge roller allows a more aggressive paper or more aggressive label to travel through the printer, out the roller, and onto that bag. So again, reducing the surface area so it's not sticking, and it's preventing more jams that would happen on a smooth roller like the L90 Plus has there. And then so that's a big one for labeling. This one as well. We're trying to, and we're doing this with more of our products from Epson's point of view, but also trying to limit the number of different SKUs. So again, with those L90s, you either had to order the Ethernet version or the serial version or the USB version. Now we're putting it all into one and trying to reduce as much as we can to make it simpler. And we're seeing this, let's say we're using serial today, but we know we got to upgrade to USB, or we have to upgrade to Ethernet, but we're just not ready to pull the trigger now. Well, I can still get the L100, use serial, and then when I'm ready, make that change. Or like we talked about, there's all these different applications. Maybe my new application, my drive-through is using USB, but my cash register is still using serial. I can use the same printer and just that different connection. But getting into here, and I know, Stephen, I'll give it back to you here in a second, really talking about the different medias that can be involved with, the QuickStick and whatnot. But the L100 is, can work with all those through that different roller and through the different paper path. But why don't you tell us how we do those applications with the media?
Yeah. I'm not as hardware savvy as Ian, but the new Ridge platen roller is really a game changer. The bottom line, it makes it much easier for restaurants to choose a printer for their solution, because it'll handle removable, semi-removable, permanent adhesive. They're consolidating the connectivity, so again, it makes it much easier for restaurants to use that with their existing point of sale system. And they have many choices on the media, whether it be a QuickStick label or a standard receipt paper. And the TM-L100 holds a 4-inch outside diameter roll, so it can hold a very large roll, bigger than some of the traditional receipt printers and other printers out there. So moving on here, jumping into the QuickStick solutions for restaurants, we can go to the next slide. there's a little bit of a misnomer out there on, what might have been called linerless labels, where historically, linerless labels imply you're replacing a linered label. However, in the quick service or restaurant industry, the reality is these QuickStick receipt labels are replacing, either a traditional receipt, a handwritten note, or something else. They're not generally replacing another label. So we now call these QuickStick receipt labels, and so you have a more of a traditional receipt roll with adhesive on the back or a sticky back. There's a lot of different names that people may call them there. Ian, you had a thought?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sorry to kind of jump in there, but that's exactly what we saw in the poll. Traditional receipt paper or not labeling at all type thing. And so I think, like you were saying, going from a receipt to a label as opposed to, like your example of a die cut label to a linerless label, it's really going from no labeling at all to labeling.
Yep. So we're really excited about our POS sticky QuickStick receipt label adhesive range, and this is where, in combination with the TM-L100, we've got a very robust labeling solution. So we've got adhesives for every application. We have our QuickStick Peel, which is a removable adhesive, which is a low-tack, general purpose adhesive for stick and peel applications. They work on bags, cups, and that's a lot of the traditional linerless that you see out there today. And then with the TM-L100, we've been able to add a more aggressive adhesive, a QuickStick Hold, which is a semi-removable. And those are for applications that require a more aggressive adhesive. We're seeing more and more recycled packaging, ribbed packaging. You might see a cup that's a little bit fuzzy. So you need a more aggressive adhesive to stick to those applications. But they're also, repositionable and removable without residue. And then a product that we're very excited about is the QuickStick Seal, which is a permanent adhesive. So it's a very aggressive adhesive for sealing a bag, for a corrugated box, or a tamper evident seal. So we're seeing more and more requirements for an aggressive adhesion. So the QuickStick Seal with permanent adhesive fits that bill. And then, all of our QuickStick linerless label solutions, are also, sustainable. We're seeing a lot of demand for non-phenol products, so products that are made without BPA, BPS, and other phenols. California has their Prop 65 law, where they outlaw receipts and labels that contain BPA and BPS. And then the state of Washington on January 1st outlawed all phenols in receipts. So this product meets all those requirements. And then we're seeing legislation in many other states. So it's just a matter of time where we're going to see legislation for people outlawing those things. Also the product does not have a liner, so you can get, more labels on a roll, which is more sustainable there. And it checks a lot of the sustainability boxes that we're seeing more and more, retailers and restaurants have. And then, the lineup of the actual label products, comes in really 3 different widths. You've got 1.5 inches, 2 1/4, and 3 1/8. And then, as I mentioned, you've got the 3 adhesive options, the peel removable, the hold semi-removable, and the seal permanent. So we've got, 3 options for the 1 1/2, 3 options for the 2 1/4, and then 3 options for the 3 1/8. We also have a new product which we call our Peel Light, which is a thinner product, so we can get more labels on a roll. And in summary here, the key takeaways that this Epson QuickStick solution is designed to solve it's designed to help restaurants, improve their order accuracy. Again, they're at 87%, so they need to get better than that. They want to get orders out faster. You want to better manage, the app orders, online takeout, delivery, third-party orders, or whatever's coming down the pipe, because we know we'll see other channels that restaurants need to be able to add on. They can make better use of their counter space. They can enhance their brand image to make sure, we're promoting loyalty and retention. In summary, labeling is no longer an option. Really, to be competitive and to provide the best service, labeling is now required for a quick service operator.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Stephen and Ian. So we're going to move into the Q&A section of the webinar. Ian, this one is for you. Do these QuickStick receipt labels work in the TM-L100 as well?
Yes, I would put some caution though, because like we were talking about with the ridge roller and that permanent or that seal adhesive, and depending on like the L90 model, it's probably not going to work. The L100, it'll work for all of them, of course. But the L90, it's a little bit more, depends because of that roller and its ability to support high adhesive.
Awesome, thank you. And then Stephen, in scenarios where we want to send many orders to the printer and not have the printer print just one at a time, how do we control the paper from gathering and sticking to itself?
Yeah, so like Ian mentioned, one of the key features of the TM-L100, it's got that, take-in sensor. So it's not going to keep printing labels until someone takes off the label that is already there, which eliminates that problem. Ian, did I explain that properly?
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. And I'll just add another difference from the L90 to the L100 is the L100 has a center cut, which may not seem like a whole lot, but if you're printing, let's say you are printing 2 at a time instead of just 1, it allows the labels to come out straight as opposed to having the cut on the side and having them curve. So again, just another little piece to kind of help manage that workflow.
Okay, great. Well, we are at time, so if we didn't get to your question, we will reach out directly. But before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone about our giveaway. One lucky winner will receive the TM-L100 printer and a case of their choice of QuickStick receipt labels. But we will do a drawing after the webinar. So keep an eye out on your inbox. We'll notify the winner by email soon. So if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day. So